A lot of people are learning this week after the assassination of a healthcare CEO about propaganda of the deed. Propaganda of the deed is a direct action that takes the place of targeted assassinations or bombings against places of power or capital. The idea is to spark the spirit of revolt in the populace. But the problem was, it didn't work in the 19th century. Many bombings happened, many assassinations took place, but very rarely would it lead to anything more, which made many theorists, both from anarchist, socialist, and communist circles, realize that maybe perhaps this tactic did not work effectively. And we have to understand some of these assassinations were really high profile, like the Empress of Austria being assassinated. But none of this changed the needle or really affected the directionality of what was happening. It did occasionally feel people with a intense catharticness of watching people with extreme power suffer. But for the most part, this was generally twisted and used against those ideologies who were committing these acts as ways to demonize them as nothing but terrorists. One of the main critiques was that propaganda of the deed was indeed an individualist way to go about political change, that your one individual act against an individual bombing or building or whatever was still a drop in the bucket, and effectively assuming that you, through some great act, will be able to inspire everyone to do something. This obviously reeks of a bit of hubris and a little bit of great man theory of history. Because honestly, most of the changes that happened was through long amounts of work, large amounts of organizing, and when revolutions kicked off, they tended to move very quickly and highly unpredictably. And oftentimes, even in big famous cases like the French and Russian revolutions, revolutionaries were taken a little off guard by how quickly things spiraled out of control. Propaganda of the deed sounds cool and sexy in the abstract, the idea of some righteous hero taking down a person of extreme power. But ultimately, this does not solve the problem, which requires a lot of people coming together to make systemic structural change. What it does give us is a moment of catharsis, but that speaks more to the fact that our system has so few mechanisms or abilities to affect change at the moment, and such organizational lack, especially amongst trade unions where power originally was being held during this period, that people feel that one of the only ways to do anything is through such direct action. And the problem is, this will become more and more common of a tactic taken as things are not addressed, especially around things like in the US, healthcare, or globally with climate change. Political leaders need to remember that propaganda of the deed only becomes popular when people feel there is no other way to change, and that is something they need to reflect on.